Live stream audio check. Check 1, 2. So live stream audio check. Check 1, 2.
Good. Good morning, Councilor Vicente. Can we check your audio, please?
It's working 5 by 5. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Councilor Tour. Can we check your audio, please?
Hi, good morning.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Everyone ready? Well, good morning and welcome to our meeting of the Brampton Audit Committee. All members are present either in person and online, and Councillor Pelesh will be joining us shortly. Approval of the agenda. Does any members have any wish to add any business to today's meeting? Seeing none, I have a motion moved by Councillor Berard to approve the agenda. All those in favor? The motion carries. Declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Do any members have any declaration of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act for any matter to be considered on today's agenda? Seeing none, the clerk will note for the meeting minutes. Consent. I'll read each agenda item that is subject to the consent motion, and any member may verbally identify an item to be held for debate during the meeting. Any item not held for debate will be considered as part of the consent motion. I will read the agenda items, and members may identify items they would like to be held. So 5.1 will be held for a presentation, but that is by Maria from KPMG for the 2025 audit findings report for the year end December 31st, 2025. 6.1 will be held for presentation, and it is a staff report for Public Works and Engineering Facilities Maintenance Audit for 2026. 6.2 we're also going to hold for presentation for a staff report for Transit Facilities Maintenance Audit. 6.3 staff report Corporate Ethics Hotline Quarterly Report Q2 2026.
Can you hold, please?
That is being held by Councillor Toure, I believe.
Yep.
Thank you. 6.4 is a staff report for the internal audit work plan status update for Q2 2026. And that is on consent. And we have 7.1 staff report for 2025 audit consolidation financial statements for the city of Brampton. And that is held based on the presentation from 5.1. The clerk will summarize those items to be included in our consent motion for approval.
Through you, Chair Keenan. On the consent motion, there's only one item, staff report, 6.4, internal audit work plan status update for Q2 2026.
Perfect. I have a motion moved by Member Russell to approve the consent motion. All those in favor? That motion carries. That brings us to presentations. So 5.1, we have a presentation by Maria, the lead audit engagement partner from KPMG regarding the 2025 audit findings report for year end December 31st, 2025. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Good morning, and thanks for having me here today. I'm here to present to you the audit findings for our audit of the financial statements of consolidated City of Brampton for the year ended December 31st, 2025, and the entities that are consolidated within. Our report today is per the requirement of the Canadian Auditing Standards to report the findings of our audit to those charged with governance. I'll start on page 4 of our audit findings report, which is the highlights page. So in terms of the status of the audit, at this stage, we've substantially completed all of our audit procedures. I'd like to also take this opportunity to thank the finance team at the city for all of their support during the audit, which enabled us to complete our audit in a timely fashion. To cover some of the items on this slide, overall, it was a clean audit. There were no significant changes from the audit plan that was communicated to management and to the audit committee. And they were completed based on the materiality that was communicated to you as part of the planning. Materiality, as a refresher, was 27.5 million, and the audit misstatement posting threshold was 1.1 million. As a result of our audit, we did not identify any unusual or fraudulent transactions or any items that should be reported to you in terms of significant control deficiencies. There were no corrected or uncorrected audit misstatements identified this year for the main city or the smaller entities, which is really good. So we will be issuing a clean audit opinion this year, pending council approval, of course. There were no new accounting or auditing standards that came into effect this year, so it was a little bit of a normal year for finance and for audit team. There are some new accounting standards that are coming down the pipeline. We've attached them in the appendices. One of them is going to be a heavy lift, which is the Employee Future Benefit Standard. We can talk about that in a future meeting. On page 6, we've noted the remaining items at this stage. So the first couple items are done. If you go back one slide, the only item that is pending at this point are standard items that should be pending. So that would be your council approval, signing of the management representation letter, and the inquiry related to subsequent events, which has to be done all the way to the date of our opinion. Moving on to page 6, here we're covering our presumed risk of fraud from management override of control. So this is not specific to City of Brampton. It is a risk that is required to be included in all audit engagements, and that's because management is in a unique position to be able to perpetrate fraud by overriding controls and make it seem that they're operating effectively. There is a bunch of procedures that we're required to complete. We've completed all of them, and there's nothing that came out of those procedures. Everything seems to be operating effectively. We've also completed our procedures related to some of the other risk areas that are covered in the next few slides. So I won't cover them I won't go page by page. So pages 7 to 10, I don't have any further comments on. Page 11 provides you with an overview of some of the concepts related to control deficiencies. I just want to point out that for the City of Brampton, we take a fully substantive approach. We don't rely on controls for the purposes of our audit approach and audit testing. However, as a result of our substantive procedures, if there are any controls that come across as not being implemented properly, we are required to bring them to your attention, but we didn't identify any such controls that were missing and that were significant in nature. Pages 12 to 14 provide you with details of our audit quality framework and all the checks and balances that we as a firm have in place to make sure that our audit quality stays at the highest level of service. We've provided you with some links here as well for further information, so you can take a look at those. With that, we get into the appendices. I'll point out that Appendix B includes some required communications. We've completed these already with the treasurer, but if there's anything that jumps out based on the questions that are listed there, please feel free to reach out to me. And then the new accounting standards, obviously, that I pointed out earlier, they're also included in the appendices. This concludes the formal part of my presentation, so I'll pause here if there are any questions.
Does any members have any questions? I don't. Okay. So I will bring the staff report up after the presentation, and then we can ask any questions on that. Is your presentation finished, or is there more to continue through?
It's done?
It's done? Okay, well, I don't see any questions, so thank you so much for making the time to be here. And I will, at this time, bring up staff report 7.1. And I believe Member Russell has some questions on that report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, through you, Chair. Just a couple questions for my own edification on the statements. So one of the things I was curious about was where software falls in the categorization of capital assets.
So we do have, through the chair to Member Russell, we do have, it falls under facility, equipment, and software.
So is that part of infrastructure? Like when I
No,
look at the actual
it's,
statements?
sorry, just going back to the. Sorry, just. It would be under furniture, computer, and office equipment.
Okay, got it. And that would be, so that has a range of life from 2 to 20 years. So I would assume that it's kind of at the lower end of that. given
Absolutely,
the rapid
yes.
change of technology. Okay, thank you. That's helpful. And then just in terms of the long-term liabilities, I was curious about the sinking fund deposits. And just that the debentures that have been issued, it looks like our largest debenture has actually got the shortest time horizon. So how are we feeling in terms of our ability to kind of meet the end of term payment? And what would be the risks if our sinking fund deposits weren't equivalent to the required repayment?
Okay, so thank you for the question. Through the chair to Member Russell. Anytime, and I'm going to speak at the very high level, anytime a new sinking fund tranche is issued, there is a plan and it's built into an operating budget to make sure that the payments are actually met, our obligations are met. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think so. It looks like the interest that is on these looks pretty low, so I'm guessing they're in kind of short-term investments. Like we're not counting on the interest earnings to help with the funding necessarily. That's just gravy kind of thing.
Correct, yes.
Okay, that's helpful. Those were all my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. We have Councillor
Thank you.
Tour.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just questions regarding the increase in taxes receivable from last year to this year. Seeing, till for 2025, the 201 million. How much is that as a percentage of the overall tax that is received?
So through the chair to Councillor Tour, that's about 10% of the billing. The staff is taking a comprehensive approach to kind of tackling increase in tax receivable, obviously within the legislative framework. So we are really pushing for pre-authorized payments. We are doing early outreach to high-level accounts, working closely with strategic communications and 311. So it's a comprehensive approach, but obviously there's only so much that can be done in light of both increased billing as well as the overall economic conditions.
And how much of that is in any way correlated to the 2024 receivables? Like, what's the overlap? Do we have an idea?
We do. I don't have it with me right now, but we can definitely get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you.
No further
That's all.
questions. Okay, thank you, Councillor Tour. So with no further questions, I have a motion moved by Councillor Tour to receive the presentation and the staff report. All and approve the audited financials. All those in favor? The motion carries. That will bring us to 6.1, which is a staff report for Public Works and Engineering Facilities Maintenance Audit 2026. I'll turn it over to staff for the presentation.
Thank you, Councillor Keenan. Claire, the Director of Audit, will join us shortly. So once she joins, she'll deliver her message and answer questions if she could. So for now, we can just go ahead start like the report presentation. Okay.
Yeah, please start.
Good morning. Today, Internal Audit is presenting two facilities maintenance audits. The Public Works and Engineering Facility Maintenance Audit and the Transit Facilities Audit. Because of the two operating areas have distinct responsibilities but share some systems, contracts, and control processes, I will begin with a brief overview of how the two audits relate to one another. Next slide, please. Facilities maintenance is delivered through several operating units across the city. Within Public Works and Engineering, the Facilities Operations and Maintenance Division, in short FOM, maintains a broad portfolio of city-owned properties, including office buildings, libraries, parking facilities, leased properties, and other municipal buildings. Transit has its own facility maintenance team because its operating environment is specialized. Transit maintains its operation centers, terminals, and bus shelters. Other operating units within community services also maintain certain city facilities. Those operations were outside the scope of these two audits. However, some of the issues and recommendations identified today may also be relevant to their maintenance activities. Next slide, please. Although the two audits were conducted separately, they identified several common themes. These include procurement and vendor management, preventive maintenance oversight, city works implementation utilization, and invoice review and approval. The underlying circumstances differ between the two operating areas, and each report contains recommendations tailored to the responsible division. However, the recurring themes indicate opportunities to strengthen facility maintenance controls and more broadly across the city. Please skip slide 4 and forward to slide 5. We will begin with the Public Works and Engineering Facility Maintenance Audit, followed by the Transit Facility Maintenance Audit. After I present the audit observation, I'll pass on to Raj China, who will speak to management action plans. Next slide, please. For this presentation, I will briefly cover the agenda items. Again, FOM will discuss their management action plans. Then the presentation will revert back to me to discuss the next steps. Next slide, please. The audit assessed whether FOM's facilities maintenance operations are operating effectively. We focus on whether maintenance activities are supported by clear processes and oversight, whether facility conditions are routinely inspected and used to identify maintenance needs, and whether preventive and demand maintenance activities are properly planned, tracked, completed, and monitored. We also assess the compliance with applicable legislative, regulatory, and contractual requirements where vendors are engaged. Next slide, please. The audit covered FOM facilities maintenance activities from March 2023 to February 2026. Because CityWorks was implemented in February 2025, our review of work order management was limited to the period following implementation. CityWorks is a computerized maintenance management system. Our work included reviewing policies, contracts, and supporting records, interview staff, conducting facility walkthroughs, and performing sample testing and data analytics across preventive and demand maintenance-related activities, including inspections, building condition assessment, work orders, and invoices. Next slide. The highest rated finding relates to procurement controls over vendor-performed demand maintenance. First, we identified 9 vendors, each with cumulative spending above the $25,000 procurement threshold without contract, purchase orders, or documented procurement exceptions. Second, we identified $1.72 million in spending across 12 vendors that was processed outside established purchase orders. Part of the issue relates to a clause that appeared in at least a dozen RFPs, which appeared to tacitly permit additional competitive pricing for individual repair exceeding $5,000, even where a contract or purchase order were already in place. Third, we noted that an HVAC preventive maintenance vendor completed $215,000 in repair work through 93 invoices, including 9 repairs ranging from $5,000 to $23,000 that appear to extend beyond minor or incidental work. Finally, 9 of the 25 invoices reviewed did not contain sufficient labor and material breakdowns to verify charges against contract rates or coded pricing. These issues reduce transparency over vendor spending, weaken procurement oversight, and limit the city's ability to demonstrate compliance, appropriate contract usage, and best value. However, internal audit did not identify evidence of fraud, misconduct, or personal benefit. The finding relates to control design, documentation, and procurement process gaps. Next slide, please. The second finding relates to CityWorks. Implementing CityWorks was an important step toward automating maintenance, operation, and improving oversight. However, the system is still in transition and does not yet provide complete visibility over maintenance activity. External vendor preventive and demand maintenance work is not currently tracked in CityWorks, and internal demand maintenance work orders are not consistently recorded. CityWorks contain approximately 28,600 work orders as of February 2026. compared with 44,000 annual maintenance activities estimated in the 2025 service plan. Internal demand maintenance work orders are also generally linked to buildings rather than individual assets. This limits FOM's ability to track repair history, recurring issues, and asset replacement priorities. We recommend further configuration of CityWorks, more consistent use of the system for internal demand maintenance, and prioritized asset level tracking where feasible. Next slide, please. The third finding relates to in-house demand maintenance. We reviewed 10 internal work orders and found that 6 remained open for extended periods, ranging from 5 months to more than 1 year, with limited documentation of supervisory review or follow-up. We also noted that 99% of 1,900 demand maintenance work orders were categorized as medium priority. This suggests that the available priority levels may not be used effectively to support resource allocation and escalation of urgent issues. In addition, 10 building condition assessment items rated as poor remained outstanding, including one item where a life safety concern had been noted. We recommend strengthening documentation, priority assignment, supervisory review, and tracking of outstanding maintenance items through to completion. Next slide, please. The fourth finding relates to preventive maintenance performed by external vendors. We reviewed 35 preventive maintenance activities across 15 facilities. Most of the activities reviewed were completed as required. However, we identified opportunities to improve tracking, documentation, and escalation. Backflow preventer inspections were missed at 3 facilities following vendor performance issues and contract termination. Interim arrangements were not documented. For 11 additional activities, supporting documentation was not readily available. Internal audit completed alternative procedures and confirmed that the work had been performed. We recommend finalizing the preventive maintenance standard operating procedure, retaining vendor service report, monitoring work against required frequencies, and establishing escalation processes where maintenance might be delayed or missed. Next slide. The fifth finding relates to inspections completed by FOM staff. FOM has established the standardized checklist within CityWorks. However, our review identified gaps in completion and documentation. Of the 35 inspections reviewed, 6 were not performed and 5 were marked as complete in CityWorks despite incomplete or missing checklist. Some of the missed inspections occurred during the initial CityWorks implementation period and were particularly contributable to a system scheduling issue. Management worked with IT to reconfigure the scheduling logic after we communicated this observation to FOM. We recommend additional staff training and supervisory oversight to ensure inspections are completed and accurately documented. Next slide. The final finding relates to vendor invoice review and approval. As background, vendor invoices are processed through Oracle Business Process Management, or BPM. BPM is the city's invoice to pay accounts payable workflow. It was implemented through a phased approach beginning in 2021. Invoices are scanned into the system and routed to the appropriate business unit for review and approval before payment. We analyzed more than 8,000 invoice transactions and selected 287 invoices for detailed review based on duplicated payment risk indicators. We identified 9 invoices that were resubmitted and proved twice. 5 were detected by accounts payable before payment. However, 4 invoices totaling $6,833 were paid twice and were not identified until our review. We also identified 1 additional invoice totaling $3,277 that was paid twice for the same work under different invoice numbers. The automated system can identify exact duplicate invoice numbers. However, it might not detect a duplicate when an invoice is captured under a slightly different number during the imaging process. We recommend that approvers verify the information recorded in BPM against the original invoice image and supporting documentation. We also recommend periodic reviews of transaction data for duplicate payment indicators and follow up with accounts payable to recover the identified overpayments. Next slide. Overall, FOM has established the foundation for managing facilities maintenance across city-owned properties. There are maintenance processes in place. Specialized vendors are used for technical and regulated work. And CityWorks has been implemented to support more consistent tracking and oversight. For that reason, we concluded that the control environment is generally adequate. However, this conclusion should not be interpreted to mean that the controls are operating consistently in all areas. The audit identified several areas where controls require meaningful strengthening, particularly procurement controls over vendor-performed demand maintenance. These are significant control gaps because they reduce transparency, weaken procurement oversight, and limit the city's ability to demonstrate appropriate contract use and best value. The audit also identified opportunities to strengthen preventive maintenance oversight, CityWorks utilization, work order documentation, inspections, and invoice review. The overall message is that FOM has a solid operational foundation, but stronger controls, more specific procedures, and more consistent monitoring are required to support accountability and effective oversight going forward. Now, Raj China, Director, the Facilities Operation and Maintenance Division, will discuss their management action plans. Over to you, Raj.
Thank you, Mia. Thank you, Chair and members of the Audit Committee. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge and thank Internal Audit Team, Claire and her team actually, for the work that they completed on this review. We appreciate the professionalism, collaboration, constructive approach throughout the audit process. Management has reviewed the findings and recommendations and agree with the recommendations. We view this audit as an opportunity for us to strengthen our processes within our facilities, operations, and maintenance division. I will now briefly walk you through the management action plans related to audit finding A, as outlined on this slide. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah, thank you. So as outlined on this slide, there are 5 key actions that we will undertake. First, we will work with purchasing to create clearer rules and guidance for how maintenance work is purchased. We will also provide training to staff so everyone understands the requirements of purchase orders, quotes, or formal procurement processes for transactions exceeding $25,000. Second, we will jointly review recurring demand maintenance expenditures by service category to determine the most appropriate procurement strategies moving forward. Third, we will also ensure that we clearly distinguish preventative maintenance vendors from demand maintenance vendors to ensure work is procured through the appropriate process. So the intent would be to ensure that preventative maintenance vendors only do PM works and demand maintenance vendor only do TM works. Fourthly, we will strengthen invoice documentation requirements and provide additional staff training on invoice verification and approval. Going forward, vendors will be required to provide sufficient details on invoices, including breakdown of labor, material, and service dates with additional details. Finally, we will implement periodic management reviews where managers will be checking the data and reporting to monitor vendor spends, purchase order usage, contract extensions, and non-purchase order activity. I would also like to state that the guidelines and policies will be adhered to effective immediately as far as procurement is concerned, and we will work with purchasing to ensure that purchase orders are in place for all the procurement-related and non-PO activities are conducted, where non-PO activities are conducted. All of these actions are targeted to be completed by Q4, and we have already taken some actions to ensure that there is no compliance issue as far as the POs and non-PO gaps are concerned. I'll now pass it on to Mia again, who will discuss slide 18 from procurement standpoint.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you, Raj. Purchasing only has one slide, so I will present on their behalf. Next slide. Purchasing has agreed to clarify purchase order payment requirements and approve the exceptions in the updated purchasing bylaw. Purchasing will also ensure that future procurements do not include wording that permits additional quotation where an existing contract and purchase order are already in place, unless an appropriate exception has been approved. These actions are scheduled for Q3 and Q4 of 2026. Back to Raj.
Thank you, Mia. So under finding B, next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. Under finding B, management agrees with the recommendations related to city works and recognizes there is an opportunity for us to improve how maintenance activities are tracked, monitored, and reported. I would also like to state that City Works was recently implemented in 2025 fully. So this is a brand new tool for us as far as centralized maintenance, computerized maintenance management is concerned. So the first action is to improve how work completed by external contractors is tracked within CityWorks. We'll work with our internal IT team to enhance the CityWorks system so we better track vendors' information, maintenance schedules, work completed on city assets in one centralized location. So we'll open up a new module where vendors actually will have their data tracked within the CityWorks. The second action is to improve the use of CityWorks for day-to-day operations and repairs performed by city staff. We will provide additional training and communication to staff so the system is used more consistently across the organization. The third action is to expand the asset tagging and asset identification within CityWorks. This will mean linking maintenance activities directly to specific piece of equipment, such as boilers, generators, elevators, HVAC units, and other building assets. Doing so will provide us better information about maintenance history, reoccurring issues, asset condition for specific assets. All of these actions are targeted to be completed by Q2 of 2027. Next slide, please. So this finding is focused on improving how repairs are tracked and monitored. First, we will complete and provide refresher training to staff to ensure CityWorks is used consistently for all demand maintenance work. The training will focus on accurately recording work order requests, assigning the appropriate priority levels, attaching supporting records where required, and ensuring supervisors review and close out the work orders consistently. Secondly, we will work with IT to improve the system reminders and alerts so overdue repairs and inspections are identified earlier and completed more quickly. And lastly, we have already started entering building inspections and condition assessment data from the building condition audits into CityWorks so identified issues can be tracked and followed through the completion. All of these actions are expected to be completed by Q3 of 2026. Next slide, please. Yep. So management agrees with the recommendations related to vendor-performed preventative maintenance and has already developed several actions to strengthen documentation and performance monitoring. The first step, as Mia mentioned, is to develop a formal internal SOP for managing preventative maintenance activities performed by external vendors. This SOP will help staff, so this will be our internal SOP. This SOP will clearly define roles and responsibilities, documentation requirements, escalation procedures, monitoring expectations. And in addition to that, FOM already utilizes vendor performance scorecards and will continue using those tools to address situations where inspections are missed or vendor performance issues arises. For the second action, FOM will improve documentation processes. That includes vendor monthly reports by centralizing maintenance documentations within FOM SharePoint page. The third and the last action to address this finding is to improve how vendor performed maintenance activities are tracked. We will continue to work with IT to implement additional CityWorks layers and functionality for contractors management, and in the interim, establish a tracking solution within the SharePoint pages. All of the actions are targeted to be completed by Q1 of 2027. Next slide, please. So for this finding, management agrees with the recommendation and will provide additional training to staff where required to ensure inspections are completed consistently and documented appropriately. This includes ensuring inspection checklists are fully completed, supporting documentations is maintained, and supervisory review processes are followed. We will also develop ongoing training program to reinforce expectations and promote consistency across the division. All of these actions, they will be completed by Q3 of 2026. Next slide, please. The final finding relates to invoice reviewing and approval process. Management agrees with the recommendations and has already begun implementing corrective actions. The first action is to strengthen invoice verification procedures. Staff will be required to verify invoice numbers and other key invoice details when processing invoices through the BPM system to help identify data entry or scanning errors before payment is approved. The second action is to perform regular reviews of payment records to identify any potential duplicate payments. FOM will conduct biannual reviews of its financial transactions to identify anomalies or confirm the invoices have been paid only once. For the third action, we have already recovered the monies which were double paid to the vendors, so this item was already addressed. All actions are targeted to be completed by Q3 of 2026. Thank you again, Mia, and your team. And I would like to conclude by saying if the committee has any questions, me or my staff can answer those questions.
Thanks again, Raj. Next slide, please. Management has agreed with the recommendations, and implementation has already started for certain actions. Internal audit will follow up on the status of the management action plans and report the results through the established follow-up process. Next slide, please. This concludes the Public Works and Engineering Facility Maintenance Audit presentation. We will now take. Okay, I'll pass this to Claire.
Sorry I was late. I just want to recognize the audit support that we received from the three groups within the Public Works and Engineering Department. Is the Facilities Operations and Maintenance, Dave Sout and Dave Turpin, and Floyd Moffat, and also the group that's named Asset, Energy Management, and Capital Planning, Bala Kanagasabe. I apologize for the pronunciation here. Also the support from the Purchasing Division, Sean Morgan, Claudia Santaramo, Rajesh Sin, and also the accounting group that we've spoken to, Accounts Payable, and Maya and her staff. But last but not least, we worked very closely towards the end of the reporting stage with Raj Chinna, who just presented the Management Action Plan, also the Commissioner, Peter Pilates. We appreciate their collaboration and support. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Claire. Just usually you give that at the beginning of the meeting, but given the fact that you, I'll show your dedication. Even a car accident to be rear-ended this morning didn't keep you from showing up to audit, so we're happy that you're okay, and we thank you for getting here in a timely fashion.
Thank you.
So we do have questions from members. I will start with Councillor Brar.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, and just want to say thank you to Claire and all the departments for working together. This presentation was great, actually, and there's so many improvements that we can make in making sure that we're strengthening the city of Brampton and being more efficient. So on slide 11, I have a specific question for slide 11. Where we look at work orders not fully tracked in city work. So does that mean that we don't have a software that we can track, that the city of Brampton can use, or is it being used, or is it there, but it's not being used? Because when you look at the numbers here, it says city works contained approximately 28,600 works orders compared to approximately 44,000 maintenance activities. So just clarification on that. Thank you.
I'll pass it to Mia to answer the question.
Through the chair. So basically, City Work is the software the city has implemented starting from last year around February 2025 for FOM. Up to now, the system has not been fully utilized because sometimes, people have been used to just call or send email to the team, basically for the repair work required. So that being the case, no work orders will be logged into the system. So that being said, I guess the users, they're still in the learning process to fully adopt to the system. And also, the internal staff training is required, even for that situation, if the requirement is just coming in through emails or phone call. Once they finish the work, they're supposed to create a work order in the system. Only by doing that, like the management will have a full picture in terms of like the volume of the works and what has been fixed.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. And maybe just following up to that, so if they're still not fully on the system, I think, when we go to slide 19, we look at the management action plan. We do talk about strengthening with IT, but I do think whenever we go into any program, a program comes online, it should be enforced, more strictly, just because we are moving fast as a city. We see so many programs, projects coming through. Just seeing that part of slide 19, making sure it's enforced, maybe on a timely manner, making sure that it's a little better enforced.
Yes, so, and Councillor Brar will actually ensure that staff is retrained and we track all the work orders within the system.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then last question was, I guess the duplicate payments, are we getting money back for?
We have already received the money back, Councillor Chair. Yeah.
Thank you.
Through the chair, sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry, apologize.
That's all the question. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brar. Next on the list, we have Councillor Tour.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to Claire again, just echoing what the chair said on your dedication to audit and showing up to this meeting today. I have a bunch of questions, but I'll go in order. I see that in the audit findings that there was, we didn't identify, this is not a case of fraud or, like a malpractice on staff's part, but I want to understand on the operational side, when we're doing purchase orders outside of existing contracts, and if they're totaling up to such large amounts, I want to understand what those operational challenges may be. Like I get it, it's the interpretation of the purchasing bylaw and how we've always done work. But if somebody could get into detail about that, because I don't want members of public that may be listening to this or my residents to leave with that impression that somehow, we're just taking advantage of our existing rules, and getting involved in purchasing activity that's amounting to millions of dollars.
Thank you, Councillor. Through the chair, thank you, Councillor Tour. So there were two parts to it actually. There was first was the demand maintenance, which we actually acquired through the vendors directly, and that was a misinterpretation error. And the second one, where we actually had the purchase orders, but PM vendors actually did the DM work. There were there were languages in the documents where actually, which gave the allowance to staff to actually get quotes from the PM vendors and get the work done if it was expeditiously required. For examples, I'll actually ask one of my managers to give you maybe, some examples so it is more clear for you. Dale, my contracts manager, will be giving some examples.
So through the chair, there's several reasons why we may be using vendors to perform work that, one would be to expedite the work. So if you already have a preventative maintenance vendor who is on site performing work and they identify something that needs to be repaired right away that the vendor is able to repair, then a lot of it, in order to expedite work, we would have that vendor just complete the work. In other instances where we're engaging DM vendors to come in and quote work, we've always allowed operational departments to engage other we'll use HVAC as an example. We have 4 HVAC vendors to come in and get comparable quotes to ensure that we're getting proper value for dollar. In this situation, we're using vendors of record. These are vendors who have been through the bidding process already. We have their certificate of insurance on file. We have their WSIB on file. So operational departments are utilizing vendors who have already been vetted through the city in order to either expedite work or to get competitive pricing. Does that answer?
Thank you, and
through the chair, does that answer your question, Councillor Tour?
Yes, it does, and that's why I wanted to ask this question to get that understanding that the reality is when you're on a job site, if somebody's already on the roof, they find another issue that they can fix right away. That is saving us time. It is also saving us money. I want to make sure that we capture this operational part of the work in the updated purchasing bylaw, so that I don't want to see an updated purchasing bylaw that comes back and makes this process less efficient, where you don't have the authority, or the team that decides the work that happens that day doesn't have the ability to execute the work that day. That you send, the contractor that's already on site doing one job, you send them back home and they come back 3 months later to perform the second part of that work. I want to make sure that any of these operational challenges are considered in that updated purchasing bylaws. But thank you for those examples. That really helps clarify some of this.
Thank you. Sorry, sorry, Councillor Tour, I'm going to ask for some clarity just on your questions while we had the gentleman. Sorry, I never caught your name. Dale. Sorry, and if I may, Dale, just a quick question, just based on Councillor Tour's question to you there. My understanding is we have preventative maintenance, and that is someone who gets a contract to go around and fix certain items. And I may be wrong, but the SOP in there would state that they couldn't do other maintenance because essentially they're providing themselves the work. Hey, I found this, it's broken, there's no really check and balance. Would I be right in saying that that would be either that's currently, and maybe I don't know if audit or staff could comment on that, that the measure is put in place actually to protect the city, where they shouldn't be doing that. And I believe that's already part of what should be being followed under those procurement guidelines. Can I get someone to answer that for me?
I'm happy to take that one for you.
Sure.
If our city clerk can be kind enough to go to finding A, first page and the second paragraph, that's there. So there should be a differentiation between preventive work and demand work, which is repairs, right? And in the RFP for preventive work, they do allow minor work to happen. But what we found is some of the invoices are ranging from $5,000 to $23,000 were being done by preventive maintenance. So it's not always small.
Okay.
It's quite a bit.
So to my question, the answer is no, they shouldn't be doing it. And what we found through the audit is not only are they doing it, but they're doing it in a mass scale for something that should have went out for procurement. So the underlying issue is 2 problems. 1, we're not following the SOPs for what they should be doing. And 2 is we're exceeding the amount that is given for those quick fixes. These are items that should be going out for procurement. And that's where, some of my questions were laying is, that's a big problem. Somebody's coming here doing essentially projects and works inside our facilities that should have been a tender or done by another contractor to verify those pricings and those costs. And I'm gonna ask one more question on this. Was that paid through an invoice or paid through a P card? In some of these instances of $20,000 or $10,000 invoices.
Again, I'll take that question. So from PWE's side, the main payments they have processed is through check requisition. Because it's not paid through PO, it's mainly check requisition. There's some little bits that were through P card, is not a big issue there. It's through check requisition.
Okay, so to Councillor Tour's point, understandably, if something is small, there is a leeway currently within the SOP or the contract that allows small amounts of maintenance to be done if it needs to be done in a timely fashion. What we're seeing here today is an exceeding amount to the credit limits of where you can go of 23,000. And my question is, what is the total amount over the last 3 years that was done by preventative maintenance outside of a PO?
Just a second, we do, yeah. I'll let Mia handle that question. We did look into the numbers, and the numbers are fairly big, yeah.
Okay, can I get what that number is?
Yeah, Councillor Kina, actually, let me just confirm your question. So your question is on the preventive maintenance, right?
Correct.
Okay, so actually our testing has not found, problems with preventive maintenance. They pretty much stayed within the contract and based on the contract rate and agreed upon terms. So the main issues we found, they were from demand maintenance.
Demand maintenance?
Yes,
Okay.
like the more related to the repair work.
Okay, Mia, I'll take over this question again. Okay, so I have found my paper. So here's the thing. So the city is divided into two large groups. Okay, group one consists of recreation under community services. Group two consists of FOM, transit, fire, parks. Okay, these two groups have established different contractor for PM and DM work separately. So what we found that is what they all said was correct. Some of the department are using another department's purchase order, but they're using their contractor, but not the purchase order. So actually the amount that was spending on non-PO work is humongous.
Can I have the number, please?
So if I were to divide it by groups, are you talking totally? Like, for instance, FOM spent 200, okay, roughly about $300,000 in the contract period. That was outside of the PO. And the other group, I won't even say, but, there's just quite a bit, yeah.
Outside of it. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in, Councillor Tour. I just wanted to get clarification on your comments. I apologize. It actually went a little bit longer than I anticipated. Do you have any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I do. But thank you for those additional questions. That helps clarify some of this. My additional questions were regarding the duplication in payment for invoicing. I'm having trouble just understanding, is this an issue with staff sending in multiple requests, or is this an issue with our system that we're using not being able to identify duplicate invoices? I'm assuming it's identifying based on images of invoices, and I see I see in that attached report in the appendices where it's a one digit is off on the two different invoices, so it creates two different invoice numbers. But is that an error that's happening on our system, or is that an error, like a human error, that's happening?
I'm happy to take that question through the chair to Councillor Tour. So the first line of defense is invoice approval itself. You review, you approve it. Now, if you don't catch it, it goes to accounts payable. They deals with millions, tens of millions of accounts payable going out. They do analytical work. They could sometimes help spot it, right? And we come in, we're the third line of defense for the city, and that is typically what internal audit usually perform. So we spot whatever we could find in terms of our sample, right? So this is the thing. So Councillor Tour, you were asking whether the percentage we found, the invoice number was significant, because if you think about how many millions, the truth is, as auditors, we go through duplicate payment scan all the time. You're not supposed to find that many. Usually for us, it's going through the motions. In a rare circumstance, you find a few, right? But in these cases, so even if with the public works, if, let's say we scanned 8,181 invoices, right? We could not go into details of each invoice. All we could do is use audit analytics to see which ones look like possibly could have a duplicate payments issue. And then we would zoom in that 100, 280 invoices, and then we find that, right? But we don't have time to go through lots of invoices.
So Claire, I appreciate, I believe Councilor Tour's question, is it a computer error or a human error that's causing duplicates?
Okay.
Is somebody signing off as a person saying these are two separate invoices, or is this put into the computer system wrong, which made us pay it? And Councilor Tour, if I'm wrong, please step in, but I believe that's what he's asking.
In terms of PWE's invoice review issue, 9 out of them comes from a scanning error the staff didn't catch. When you're approving invoice, you're supposed to look at what is the invoice image and what is the number that's being scanned. Let's say if the 6 was scanned into 8, you can reject that, and that won't, and the system won't be, you won't get a duplicate payment. But if you're approving invoices without reading the images, and then it could possibly be paid twice.
Thank you for that. So that approval is happening, through you, Mr. Chair, sorry. Is that approval, or is that happening at the stage with Public Works, or is that happening at the accounts payable team?
It happens
where the numbers are not matching up.
Okay, through the chair, so Councilor Tour, the very first, that's what I was saying at the beginning, the very first defense, it comes to city staff for approval first before it goes to accounts payable to be processed. So the very first person who sees those invoice gets routed is city staff who's approving it from management side, okay? And then it goes to accounts payable. They are the second line of defense, and they do catch some.
And okay, no, that helps. That answers the question. But on the second line of defense, or computer systems, can you tell me why there's reasons where in some cases it has processed that payment, the duplicate payment, but in some cases it was able to stop it? Like, what is allowing that system to stop some of the payments versus approving some of the payments?
Because accounts payable also conduct analytics. When they see sometimes the same amount, right, slightly different invoice number, they will look into it. But they have a volume of tens of millions of dollars to process each year. So relying on accounts payable to do a complete analytical work, identify every single duplicate payments is not sufficient. Maya can answer the rest of the.
Sorry. Through the chair to Councilor Tour, I'm going to try to maybe explain the process, how this happens from the system perspective. So we have the OCR, the optic reader, that reads the image of an invoice. And in some cases where the image is not of the very high quality, it would transpose certain numbers. So 6 to 8 generally, or 5 to 6. So this is kind of the first step, and then to Claire's point, that goes into workflow with the operating department and finally ends up with accounts payable. I would like to say that we have between accounting services, our system administrator, and IT, we did raise a ticket with Oracle. This is Oracle tool. This optic reader, to see if there's any upgrade or if there's anything that they can do to kind of, enhance the quality of the OCR. So that's with Oracle right now. So I don't know if that helps.
Thank you, and that was, through you, Mr. Chair, that was going to be my follow-up question on that IT side of things, and that helps answer that question as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Tour. We have Member Russell.
Is my mic on? Great. Thank you. Through you, Chair. Just a follow-on question to Councilor Tours. Maybe I'll start with that. I have a few questions, but With respect to the vendor invoice review and approval, I have the, I don't know if I'd call it a pleasure, but the occasion to approve a lot of invoices myself. And I will say that I think as a reviewer, you are looking for certain backup, et cetera. Would I know that an invoice of the hundreds of invoices I review, has a duplicate that has a different number? I'm not sure I would catch that, so I'm glad to hear that there is a kind of that secondary approval or review that happens through the system. I was curious, Claire, how was internal audit able to catch the instances where we actually had a duplicate invoicing that had it was a separate invoice number and yet was for the same thing? Was that through your analytics tool, or was that really a manual catch?
So, through the chair, as Mia discussed earlier in one of the slides, basically what happened is we look at the entire invoicing and we first perform an analytic scan. You're looking for similar dates, similar location, and similar numbers, and you identify those are the risk factors, right? And then you can only zoom in a small portion of the invoice to see, actually looking at the imaging to see if they are the same. So sometimes because we are doing that, so we caught some of that.
So you caught it through like manual review?
No,
Through the
it's
zoom in on the sample?
analytics first, and then go to the manual.
Yeah.
So if you look at every single, you can look at the 30 invoices with, if you don't do the analytics, you probably won't find any. But if you did analytics, because they are the similar dates,
Yeah.
similar amount, and then you would look into those to see.
Got it.
Yeah.
And presumably with this, hopefully upgrade, the system will be able to use similar analytics based on what we're seeing today, right, in terms of systems.
Yeah.
So I think that's great that that is an avenue that we're looking at. So
I
thank
think
you
Mia
for that.
wants to supplement that answer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She's the chair.
through the chair. So, Member Nico, to just address your question, mainly it's Excel analyzation work we did because the data is manageable, right? If it's becoming like large enough, we'll be using ACL. But right now, like to answer your question, it is Excel by filtering all the risk indicators. And once we complete that, we zoomed in, like the ones presented, the risk indicators, and we actually looked into, one by one, the detailed invoices.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Through you, Chair, I have some additional questions. Just wanted to clarify with the internal audit team, in your detailed report in Table 3, you had listed some of the expenditures that weren't charged through purchase orders, and also had highlighted a couple where the contract itself provided the threshold of 500,000. So I was curious, just looking at kind of the largest example there, which was vendor 10 at the top of the table. It was an extensive number of invoices, right? For those invoices, were they individually below the 5,000 threshold?
Sorry, just to clarify through the chair to Citizen Member Russell, you're talking about the 319,274?
Yeah, of
Okay.
total spending outside the PO. So on the individual invoices from the vendors, were they below that threshold? Or were they all
Below the
within
5,000 threshold? Yes, we found, in fact, the threshold itself isn't always being consistently applied. Sometimes people do get a quote when you're 3,000, sometimes staff don't get a quote when you're 7,000. So it's really not consistent. So yes, within the 319,274, there are lots of amount that is below the 5,000.
And I'll tell you why I'm asking. I just think there could be the perception that we are giving the vendor a bit of a roadmap for how to operate, below that threshold. Like, to me, from an internal controls perspective, those thresholds are in place for the city internally to manage versus necessarily sharing those with vendors. So just, I couldn't recall if that was one of the action items, was to ensure that we don't really have that within the contracts?
I think our purchasing director is actually here. And, you know, in order to confirm these kind of findings, we usually talk to our expertise who's in the purchasing. And I think Marlon is also the commissioner. CEO also purchases under him. So maybe I would invite Sean and Marlon to speak. I don't know. Marlon, did you want to speak first?
Through the chair to Member Russell, it's a standard practice for the city to actually put out what our procedures are. So as part of the contract, the vendor would know what those procedures are.
Thank you. So one final comment through you, Chair. Just when I looked at this and also when I looked at transit, there seemed to be kind of a central theme, which I know is probably why you looked at them together, which is really that even though we do have a central procurement team, procurement and purchasing team, it seems like, I don't know that we're really centralizing the procurement process. So the decentralized procurement and approvals process and kind of that lack of common understanding on definitions seem to be the common underlying theme. So one of my questions is, while all these recommendations and the actions of management sound really good, and I think there's lots of opportunity there, has there been any consideration for centralizing those processes so that we have common controls? And I don't know who I should be directing
I can
that
take
question.
this
Thank
one
you.
for now. So there was a 2019 report, and it's actually authored for community services. The efficiency study is done by Blackline, and there was about 4 recommendations on the facility maintenance area. One of them is centralization. And actually, right now, when we talk about all the city's contract for facility maintenance, for instance, out of the 39, that is what we roughly looked at, 34 of them were established by facilities operation and maintenance because that was as a step to centralizing the facility maintenance. So for instance, the gentleman who was just standing here, Dale Turpin, and they're the main city's contract administrator for establishing contract for all department who has common facility maintenance items. Now you have also some specialized facility maintenance. For instance, later on you'll hear from transit. They have some specialized stuff that only they do. Of course, it makes sense for them to establish, like the hoist for repairing cars and stuff like that, right? It'll be established by them, but there are some common elements. Those are done by the FOM group.
I'm not sure that answered my question. I think there's common controls and frameworks, regardless of the specialty knowledge required to contract with the organizations. I guess that was my point, is that the central controls are all the same. Yes, you would have different people involved in the procurement discussions, but some of the underlying controls, I would argue, are similar.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
sorry, you're talking about controls. So for instance, the very first control is our purchasing bylaw. Everybody is supposed to abide by the bylaw. The bylaw has very clear thresholds. That beyond a certain threshold, you must involve vendor through the purchasing department, which is why I was going to invite Sean. If you wanted, we can have Sean explain the purchasing control that is applicable to every single unit of the city operations, okay? That is one of the things. So above 25,000, you must have, you cannot no longer do a direct purchasing. Above $100,000, you're supposed to go out to public for RFP. Between that two number, 25,000 and 100,000, you can do an invitational for 3 or 4 vendors within the city, right, too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beleshi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think a lot of questions have been asked. I guess some of the things that I didn't understand with respect to, we'll go with the Oracle, the scanning document. With respect to, you were going to walk us through kind of what happens if that invoice is is unrecognizable and unreadable. At that point, once it's scanned by this system, and does that system then send off a warning to say that something's wrong? Or is it just a carry through because it made an 8 a 6 and thinks that it's okay?
So through the chair to Councilor Kalashi,
No,
if it-
yeah, there you go. Your mic wasn't on.
Okay,
Sorry.
perfect, thank you. If the numbers are totally off, the system will flag and kind of highlight the field with the invoice. With these cases, I guess the system itself was fairly certain that was reading correctly. As I said, they're very, either 6 or 8, so it didn't really flag that field because it was so close.
And I guess I'm not understanding where the backstop is then. Is we just trust that the system works?
So-
Obviously, it doesn't. So we trust that it works and then we don't, there's no checks?
I suppose to, because the next step would be really with operating department, because the correct invoice is attached as part of the workflow. So whoever's approving the invoice should actually pull up the invoice as a backup and confirm that the numbers correspond and then the numbers are accurate.
And in these cases, that didn't happen?
Correct.
Okay. And on a go forward, I guess it's as simple as that person looking at the invoice, signing off on it. Like, we obviously identified the individual, that's why the request for training, fantastic. But on a go forward, I believe it's simple as signing off on what invoices need to go to that department.
Correct.
That's kind of where we're.
Correct, yes.
Okay. As for the city works, the implementation of the February 2026 city works are we seeing, I didn't check to see when this audit happened. I'm assuming it happened prior to that city works, or was there overlap, Claire?
You mean this audit?
Yes.
This audit, we just, our last, so for CityWorks, CityWorks was implemented in February 2025. Our field work ends in
I
February
had a 2026
2026.
number, sorry. Can we pull up the,
Finding B, right?
I'm sorry, I could have swore that it said 2026.
It's finding B, I believe.
Approximately
Slide
20.
11.
Were recorded in CityWorks as of February 28, 2026. And CityWorks was implemented, you said in 2025?
Yes, CityWorks
Oh.
is implemented in 2025. Our field work ends in February 2026. We had 1 year. So we had 28,600 work orders. But annually, according to FOM staff service plan, they are supposed to have about 44,000 work orders altogether, everything.
Okay.
So we're missing a chunk here.
And so from the before and the after, are we thinking that CityWorks is going to catch the issues from the before CityWorks was implemented? And this is going to fix the problem?
Sorry, Councillor Palashi, through the chair, what is your question again?
I think I'd like to go in camera. I think I have some questions that maybe need to be asked in camera because of I sought legal advice and Madam Clerk, if you can identify the rationale.
Through you, Chair, if there's concern that there may be litigation come out of something, then that would be, the closed session would be pursuant to 239 2E, litigation or potential litigation, but I'll defer, I believe our city solicitor is online.
That would be correct, Mr. Chair, that we would go through that exemption, section 239, sub 2, sub E. Can you hear me?
Yep. Yes, we can. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Solicitor.
Okay, so you move.
I'm happy to move in camera after everybody's asked their questions, if there's any other questions. Or do we want to stand this down and carry on with the public
So I have a couple motions that I was going to put forward on this item.
on this item.
So if you want to just, it's your call, Councillor Bushy, what you would like to do.
So let's stand, I would like to see those motions. Can we stand this item down, get through with the rest of the business, the rest of the items? I think there was the. And come back to that, okay?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll stand this item down and we'll go to 6.2, which is a staff report regarding transit facility maintenance 2026. And I'll hand this over to Claire.
Come over here.
Right? We can just wait.
Wait.
I'm going to pass it to Brad. Brad will start by identifying the staff we work closely, and then he will proceed to present the slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. As Claire mentioned, I will be presenting the Transit Facilities Maintenance Audit Report. But before that, a couple thank yous here. I want to thank Ryan Booth, the Director of Transit Operations and Maintenance, Suraj Brahimi, the Senior Manager, Transit Maintenance, and David Parasini, the Supervisor of Facility Maintenance. We thank them for their ongoing cooperation and support throughout the audit process. Next slide, please. In terms of the agenda, it will very closely monitor the FOM presentation. So I will speak to the 6 audit findings, and then Ryan Booth will address each of the 6 management action plans. Next slide, please. This audit assessed the effectiveness of transit facilities maintenance operations and evaluated whether facility inspections and preventative maintenance activities are appropriately planned, executed, and monitored. Demand maintenance processes, including service requests and work orders, are effectively managed and controlled. Vendor activities and contracted maintenance services are adequately monitored and comply with contractual and regulatory requirements. And supporting administrative controls, including procurement, work documentation, shelter cleaning tracking, and invoice review, are sufficiently designed to support accountability, operational oversight, and payment accuracy. Next slide, please. Our audit scope covered transit facilities maintenance activities from January 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2025. The audit methodology included reviewing policies, procedures, contracts, and agreements related to transit facilities maintenance and vendor management, interviewing transit facilities maintenance staff, conducting walkthroughs at the Clark and Sandalwood facilities, transit terminals, and shelters, and performing sample testing and data analysis on service requests, work orders, preventative maintenance, inspection records, and invoices. Next slide, please. Audit finding A. Procurement controls over vendor-performed transit maintenance need improvement. Vendor-performed transit facility maintenance was not consistently managed through appropriate procurement channels, resulting in spending that exceeded procurement thresholds, work being completed outside established purchase orders, and a lack of clear distinction between preventative and demand maintenance activities. The following key issues were found. First, 12 vendors exceeded the $25,000 purchasing bylaw threshold without purchase orders or formal procurement approval, with total spending of $1.067 million. Second, demand maintenance was procured from vendors without purchase orders. 2 HVAC vendors without POs accounted for 75 transactions totaling $183,000, compared with 70 transactions totaling $126,000 for the contracted PO vendor. And third, preventative and demand maintenance were not clearly separated. The preventative maintenance vendor completed over $100,000 in demand maintenance work, including $31,000 that appeared to exceed the intended minor repair scope outlined in the vendor contract. These gaps reduce transparency and oversight over vendor spend and affect Transit's ability to demonstrate compliance, appropriate contract use, and best value. It should be noted that internal audit did not identify evidence of fraud or personal benefit. This finding relates to procurement control design, documentation, and identifying gaps. We recommend that Transit, in consultation with purchasing, should ensure procurement activities comply with the city's purchasing bylaw requirements, define when quotation-based sourcing may be used for demand maintenance, establish controls for repairs identified through preventative maintenance, and implement periodic spend monitoring to identify vendors approaching or exceeding procurement thresholds, any non-purchase order activity, costs not charged to existing purchase orders, and quotation exceptions. Next slide, please. Audit finding B. Preventative maintenance tracking and oversight requires strengthening. The following key issues were found. First, preventative maintenance activities in certain areas are not formally tracked. Second, preventative maintenance inspections for fuel pumps, generators, and backflow preventers were not consistently completed as required. And third, HVAC preventative maintenance at the Clark facility was below contracted inspection frequencies and hours. These gaps increase the risk of missed maintenance, equipment failure, service disruption, and potential non-compliance. We recommend that Transit strengthen preventative maintenance oversight by confirming applicable requirements, reviewing vendor reports, tracking missed or incomplete preventative maintenance activities to resolution, and escalating outstanding items as required. Next slide, please. Audit finding C. In-house facility inspections require standardized checklists, documentation, and tracking. The following key issues were found. First, facility inspections are primarily recorded manually using paper checklists. Second, existing inspection checklists do not fully align with the fire safety plan requirements. And third, inspection records were not maintained for transit terminals. Inconsistent inspection practices reduce oversight, limit monitoring of completed inspections, and increase the risk of missed inspections and regulatory noncompliance. We recommend that Transit strengthen inspection controls by using CityWorks to schedule and track inspections, standardizing checklists to align with applicable requirements, maintaining inspection records for all transit facilities, and implementing supervisory review of overdue or incomplete inspections. Next slide, please. Audit finding D. CityWorks configuration and utilization requires strengthening. The following key issues were found. First, work orders are generally linked to facilities rather than specific assets. 90% of work orders were closed by frontline staff, resulting in reduced supervisory oversight. Third, service requests are not always converted to work orders as required. And fourth, outstanding building condition assessment items are tracked manually outside of CityWorks. These gaps reduce visibility over recurring issues, outstanding repairs, staff workload planning, and maintenance performance. We recommend that Transit work with IT to strengthen CityWorks configuration and use by linking work orders to specific assets, defining work order creation and closure requirements, restricting closure authority where appropriate, and tracking outstanding condition assessment items within CityWorks. Next slide, please. Audit finding E. Shelter cleaning, tracking, and monitoring require strengthening. The following key issues were found. Not all active shelters were included in the shelter cleaning tracking sheet used to monitor cleaning activities. Second, some cleaning records did not include key information, such as shelter interactive voice response number and service type. And third, service frequency expectations were not consistently defined across procedures and operational guidance. These gaps reduce management oversight and increase the risk of missed or delayed shelter cleaning activities. We recommend that Transit strengthen shelter cleaning, tracking, and monitoring by confirming all active shelters are included in the tracking sheets, incorporating key fields such as service type, aligning procedures with defined service frequencies, and monitoring exceptions to resolution. Next slide, please. Audit finding F. Invoice review and approval controls require strengthening. Vendor invoice review and approval controls do not consistently prevent or detect duplicate approvals and payments. Internal Audit performed a data analytics review of all 13,503 invoices in the audit period to identify potential duplicate payments and selected 55 invoices which were flagged as potential duplicates for further review. The result of the review was the following. 10 duplicate invoice approvals were identified. 7 of these were detected by accounts payable before payment was processed, and 3 duplicate payments totaling $4,422 were not detected and were paid twice. These 10 invoices were scanned into the system twice due to an error in the automated AP scanning process, which incorrectly captured the invoice number. 1 additional duplicate payment for $2,110 was made for the same work under different invoice numbers, resulting in overpayment. 5 invoices were paid through both check requisition and P-card. 3 of these invoices were subsequently detected by accounts payable staff. However, 2 invoices totaling $705 were not detected and were paid twice. 2 other invoices for $391 were paid through P-card using the exact same invoice to support the P-card payment. After we communicated these issues to Transit, they started working with accounts payable, which is currently in the process of recovering all the duplicate payments identified above. We recommend that Transit strengthen invoice review controls by requiring approvers to verify that invoice data captured by the automated accounts payable system matches the original invoice image. Periodically reviewing detailed payment transactions for duplicate indicators, and working with accounts payable to recover duplicate payments. Next slide, please. Overall, Transit Facilities Maintenance has basic controls in place for managing maintenance operations across transit facilities and shelters. Maintenance activities are actively supervised. Service requests are managed through CityWorks. External contractors support preventative maintenance for specialized assets. Shelter cleaning activities are monitored through an established tracking process, and standard operating procedures are in place for key activities. This baseline structure of processes and controls forms the basis of our assessment that the control environment is generally adequate. However, this audit also identified several key areas where controls should be strengthened, most notably in the area of procurement, where vendor-performed maintenance was not consistently managed or monitored. The audit also highlighted opportunities to strengthen other key processes, including strengthening preventative maintenance tracking, standardizing in-house facility inspections, enhancing CityWorks configuration and utilization, improving shelter cleaning monitoring, and strengthening invoice review and duplicate payment controls. Implementing the recommendations will strengthen the control framework, improve operational consistency, enhance internal controls, and increase the compliance, oversight, and accountability of maintenance operations. Now with that, I will turn it over to Ryan Booth, the Director of Transit Operations and Maintenance, and he will address each of these 6 findings.
Through the chair, good morning, members of council and audit committee members. I'll be presenting the management action plan for the Transit Facilities Department today. First off, I'd like to thank the audit team for all their guidance and collaboration over the last several months. We've appreciated your support and insights and have been an excellent team to work with. Turning to the presentation and action item number 1, Transit will reinforce procurement compliance through training to all facility staff and add clear documentation for all purchasing activities. Transit facilities will work with FOM and purchasing to review reoccurring PM demand maintenance costs and determine the appropriate procurement approach, including authorization, use, and extent of required quotations. Transit will align with FOM and clearly define minor versus major work to ensure vendors are used efficiently and appropriately. And transit will proactively monitor vendor spending on a quarterly basis to identify gaps and ensure contracts are in place where required. Next slide. The improving preventative maintenance oversight. The regulatory and contractual maintenance requirements for each asset will be formally documented and used as a guide to monitor PM maintenance activities across all transit facilities. Transit will work with FOM to strengthen vendor performance tracking and centralize documentation for better oversight. Transit will use CityWorks to monitor and track all PM maintenance completion gaps and compliance in real time. And Transit will work with FOM to implement clear escalation process to address any missed or incomplete vendor maintenance activities. Next slide. Standardizing central digital facility inspections. Transit will introduce standardized electronic inspection checklists to be housed within CityWorks to ensure consistent evaluations across all transit facilities. And Transit will enhance supervisory oversight to ensure inspections are completed and signed off on a daily basis. Next slide. In terms of enhancing CityWorks utilization and work order controls, Transit will work with IT to enable asset level tracking to better link maintenance activities and repair work orders to specific assets. We'll also work with IT to implement supervisory approval for work order closure to strengthen accountability and direct oversight. For 5, improve CityWorks usage. Transit will standardize work order processes for all transit and staff and provide specific training to the facilities team to ensure consistent usage across all of the transit facilities. We'll track all outstanding operational condition assessments items in CityWorks through to completion. Next slide. Strengthening our shelter cleaning and monitoring. Transit will maintain an accurate, up-to-date shelter inventory in real time and reconcile quarterly against our cleaning logs to ensure all assets are properly captured when added or removed from service. Transit will enhance data capture within our cleaning tracker to improve accuracy and transparency of shelter cleaning activities. And Transit will update our shelter cleaning SOP to better reflect our service standards and cleaning schedules. Next slide. Enhancing our invoice review and payment controls, Transit will implement clear procedures and an SOP for all staff to follow to ensure invoices are accurate, verified, and compliant before approvals, and the supporting documentation attached matches what was scanned into the system. Transit will conduct quarterly reviews to identify and prevent duplicate invoice payments and will work closely with accounts payable to recover any duplicate payments in a quick manner. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. As you just heard, next slide, please. As you just heard, the action plans have been developed. The implementation has begun for certain actions, with remaining actions scheduled through approved timelines. And internal audit will follow up and report on the status of these action plans as they become due. Thank you. That concludes the presentation, and now we will open it up to questions.
Thank you. We have Councillor Paleshi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think my general questions will relate to the other report that have been answered, but in terms of the reasoning behind me wanting to go in camera and ask those questions, I think they'll relate to this report as well because of the similarities. So I'd like to add this to one of the in-camera items, item. So sorry, I thought we were going to get through the next reports, but we are not. So that one being stood down, this one as well. And we have one more.
So,
same reason, yes.
Thank you. So on the Councillor Paleshi, to your point, that 6.3 would be our next item. However, I do have a request to go in camera for 6.3 as well through Councillor Tour for identifiable individual, which will be added to this. So I think I'd like to speak to this one. Or would you like to just stand everything down, go in camera, do that, and then come back?
I think your public questions and comments would take precedent over going in camera, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. So if I don't see any other questions, I'm going to ask some. So obviously the similarities, as Councillor Paleshi touched on, goes across everything that we're doing when it becomes maintenance, demand maintenance, so on and so forth, and we're seeing it, and I appreciate the, Commissioner Bill Boyes being here, because obviously in charge of rec centers, I'm sure if we went and did an audit in there, we would see a lot of the similarities that we're seeing across these audits as well. And why I think it'll be a balanced approach that we'll try to take here today to fix all of these issues. I do want to touch on a couple of findings in this one in particular. So if we can go to slide F, finding F, sorry, excuse me, finding F. No, it was the one that showed overpayments. Duplicate payments. Should have wrote the page number down, sorry. Yeah, this one. So I do have a couple questions here. So and this one sat out with me, which was the same work billed under different invoice numbers. So I wouldn't mind an explanation on this. Is this that the customer sent in two invoices for the same work, but did a different invoice number for them?
Through the chair, just to confirm, you're referring to the
Same key issues, same work
The
billed
second-
under different invoice numbers.
Okay, so this, what happened in this situation was it was essentially two invoices. One was ended with 9/1, one ended with 9/3. The invoices, I believe they were sent within a day or two of each other. And so different invoice numbers, but all these invoices contain a work order that has the description of the work performed, and the work order was exactly the same. So the exact same work on the exact same day sent, so it would have been, it was the vendors kind of double billing us twice for the same work.
Did we have an explanation from them as to why they did it?
I don't know. I don't know about that.
Yeah, that's still in progress. We're working on that one with accounts payable and the particular vendor.
Okay, and based on this, was this a snapshot of items that you've looked at and you found this particular issue, and there could be more, or we went through everything and this is the only one that we're currently seeing?
We went through everything, and we did an analysis. We did a pivot through Excel, and so we sorted it by, of course, vendor, but also amount, invoice date, invoice number. So the ones that were potential duplicates really kind of jump out at you because it's the same vendor, same invoice date, same amount, and in some cases, very, very similar invoice numbers. So the actual analysis of the duplicate payments was exhaustive, and I would be surprised if there was one that we didn't catch through our review.
Okay. The issue with the P card, one invoice paid twice, was it on the same P card?
Yes. No.
How far apart were the payments?
It was two different P cards. You're referring to the third one here, the five invoices paid by both. Or are you referring to the last one?
I'm reading the last one currently. One invoice for $391 for a non-PO vendor was paid twice using P card. I'm asking if that's the same P card that was used twice, or were they different P cards paying the same bill?
They were different P cards paying the same bill because it was by two separate employees. Yes.
How does that happen?
It's quite possible the vendor sent the invoice to separate, our frontline forepersons within transit. We have put a system in place where all of our P card purchases and invoices are funneling through our maintenance clerks to prevent this from happening in the future. So there'll be one person reviewing and ensuring if there is any duplicates, flagging it for the vendor. But previously it was going to our frontline forepersons who are making that payment.
So, and how are we going to be solving that in the future?
Yes, directing all of the invoices through our maintenance clerk, but also doing our quarterly GL reviews. We'll capture that right away and flag it to bring it back to the vendor for reimbursement. But we hope to catch it before it even gets to that point.
Okay. A lot of double paying coming out of what we're seeing here in this audit, which is not too comforting. I do have a motion based on, actually, I'm going to ask some other questions. I seen in here that some of the stuff that we're paying for in rentals, be it porta potties, meeting rooms, so on and so forth. And my explanation that I received was some of it came through COVID and has now been kind of made permanent. Can I get is this something that's going to continue as far as rentals go?
Yeah, that's something we'll work closely with purchasing on. Some of them, to your point, were short-term rentals throughout COVID or other situations where we're at capacity at certain terminals. So there are short-term measures to put in to fix an issue from an operational standpoint, but they turn into long-term solutions. So we need to work with purchasing on how we put a contract in place to cover those types of purchases.
Okay. And there's another one I noticed on snow removal for front-end loader to clear snow. My question is, why are we renting that, and why is it not part of the snow removal contract, whether be it through the city, or I believe Transit does their own for shelters? I could be wrong. But why is that not being captured in the contract, and why are we paying for it outside of that PO?
So that's something we'll be adding into our next contract for loader rentals, working with Fleet and their contract. We piggyback off of it. At the time, we didn't need the additional vehicle for our gateway terminal. But with the amount of snow we received over the last year, we needed to rent an additional vehicle to remove the snow from that facility and help maintain throughout the winter months.
Okay, and this is the contract, you're saying adding to your next contract, and is that contract separate than the 7-year contract we just engaged in for snow removal from the city of Brampton? Or is it aligned with the timing of that same thing? Anybody? Peter, does your team handle the snow removal for transit?
Through the chair, it's embedded in the contract. However, they don't oversee the actual operations or the payments.
Okay, so this would fall into that 7-year contract that we're now currently 1 year into?
Correct. It's a 8-year contract with 2 option years.
Okay, so my only comment to that is, looking at adding it on to the next contract, we're looking at 8 to 10 years down the road. We need a solution that's not going to be 8 to 10 years down the road. So I'm going to ask that Peter or Heidi look at what that is to make sure it's not a rental that we're paying for. It should definitely be put into this contract in some way, shape, or form. Those are all the questions I currently have. I see Councillor Plushie came back on. So I'm happy to, I do have a motion that I will present once we come back. Councillor Plushie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm glad you asked some of those questions. For sure, they took priority in going rather than going into in camera. So, but just with respect, and I think it's outside the audit, and it might not be a fair question to ask, but based off of what Peter's had just explained about the contract, the operations of the contract being held within transit, correct? And but it all tied to the RFP of our overall city snow removal. Is there not some some efficiencies that can be had if it's under us? If it's under us, it's all under us, under Public Works, Peter?
Through the chair, Councillor Plushie, we can review that and see if there's any benefits or optimization that could be achieved through having sort of one point of management.
Mm-hmm. And I guess just to clear, would it be possibly, there's a number of throughout the organization departments that do the same thing technically, but different within their department, and there's probably certainly a place for that, whether it be maybe communications, maybe sponsorships or something. But is there maybe potentially a future audit that can look into all of those, or is it just coming from department to department? You would highlight that they do this work, which is also in another area. like what was mentioned here today.
Through the chair to Councillor Palashi, if you request us to look into the other unit, city unit that also conduct facility maintenance, I can give you those are fire, recreation, parks, culture, very little probably within culture. Those are all the staff, and recreation actually has a huge, fairly large portfolio in terms of how much facilities they manage on behalf of the city. And we can entertain that. We just have to move some of the audit we already scheduled to the future, if that's what the committee wishes us to do.
That's maybe a further discussion. I don't want to, because I don't know what's coming, so I don't want to push anything yet. So, but maybe something that we can discuss at council when this comes back, because I think it's important for members of council to provide their input in that as well. So, future discussion. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And to that, Claire, I might just ask that you report back to committee just on the potential of putting that in and what may need to be moved in order to do so.
That'd be good.
Certainly, through the chair.
Thank you. Okay, so we are going to move in camera. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Palashi to open the agenda for the purpose of adding a closed session item and to move the closed session and to move into closed session to deal with the following items. On the screen, so it's 11.1, closed discussion regarding 6.1, Public Works and Engineering Facilities Maintenance Audit 2026 pursuant to Municipal Act 2001 as amended, Section 239-2E. Litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or board. 11.2, closed discussion item regarding 6.2, a staff report for transit facility maintenance audit 2026 pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001 as amended through Section 2392E. Litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. And 11.3, a closed discussion regarding item 6.3, staff report corporate ethics hotline quarterly report Q2 2026 pursuant to Municipal Act 2001 as amended under section 239-2B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. All those in favor? That motion carries. Madam Clerk, how long do you need? 10 minutes, so we will meet in camera at 11:30. Comes from today's closed session business. So as a result of our closed session today, I wish to report the following: that all items were considered and direction was given. Now we will return to 6.1. So 6.1, I do have a couple motions here on this that I would like to bring forward. If, Madam Clerk, if you can display the citywide facility maintenance centralization review. And I will read it out. So this is in relation to the study that was done by Blackline Consulting to accelerate appropriate citywide facility maintenance operating model. So that the Chief Administrative Officer be requested to report back on the implementation status of the facilities management recommendation arising from 2019 Community Services Service Efficiency Study prepared by Blackline Consulting, and identifying actions required to accelerate implementation of an appropriate citywide facility maintenance operating model, and that the review address the consultant's recommendation to centralize facility management by determining which facility maintenance activities should be managed corporately and which activities should remain within the operating departments because of their specialized or program specific. And the review include, at a minimum, centralizing contract management and common facility maintenance services across city buildings, conducting a citywide spend analysis to identify contracts, covered overlapping services, gaps in service coverage, service procured outside established contracts, opportunities to consolidate vendors, opportunities for volume discounts on whether they approve contractor list operational needs, establishing consistent maintenance standards and service levels for city facilities, establish service agreements that clarify responsibilities between the centralized facility maintenance function and the operating departments using the facilities, improving the consistency of financial coding, cost center structures, and expediting an expenditure of reporting to allow maintenance cost to be monitored by facility service type and vendor, identify staffing, technology, governance, and implementation requirements, and establishing the implementation plan where defined milestones and timelines, and that the Chief Administrative Officer report back the proposed implementation plan to the February 2027 Audit Committee meeting. All those in favor? That carries. So the next motion is around a template, citywide template to be used when approving of invoices. I feel this will help us to make sure that everything is in line and balanced, and if this is not filled out and accompanied by an invoice, that it won't be paid. So the motion is that the Director of Purchasing in consultation with the Treasurer and affect operating departments be requested to develop and implement a standardized city invoice template for all vendors providing facility maintenance and services. And the completion and submission of the standardized city invoice template be established as a mandatory condition of payment for facility maintenance services, and that each vendor be required to submit and complete standardized city invoice template and all required supporting documentation, and that the standardized city invoice template required as a minimum the vendor's name and invoice number, the applicable contract, request for proposal or quotation reference, the applicable purchase order number, and confirmation that the invoice work is being charged against the approved purchase order. Where no purchase order applies, the document procurement exception or other approved authorized supporting expenditure. The applicable work order number, service location and service date, a description of the work being performed, an itemized breakdown of labor charges including employee classification, hours worked, billed rate, and corresponding rate established through the applicable contract, request for proposal or approved quotation, an itemized breakdown of material and parts including description, quantity, unit cost, applicable contract rate, and any permitted markup, and any and all other information required by the city to verify the invoice amount is accurate, appropriately authorized, and consistent with the applicable procurement arrangement, and that invoice is not accompanied by a full completed standardized city invoice template that the vendors the vendor's invoice, that all required supporting documentation not be approved or processed for payment until the missing information has been provided and verified, and that the standardized city invoice template as related submitted requirements be incorporated into future procurement documents, contracts, purchase orders, and vendor communication, and that implemented for existing facility maintenance vendors through the appropriate transition plan, and that the director purchasing report back to the September 21st, 2026 audit committee meeting on a standardized city invoice template and the implementation timeline and any required system or process changes. So that is the motion. All those in favor? Motion carries. Yeah, that is for 6.1. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Paleski that the report from the Director of Internal Audit to the Audit Committee meeting of June 9, 2026 regarding Public Works and Engineering Facilities Maintenance Audit 2026 be received, and that the recommendations contained in Appendix 1 Public Works and Engineering Facility Maintenance Audit 2026 be approved. All those in favor? That motion carries. 6.2, I have a quick motion here on 6.2. For the review of transit facilities maintenance and expenditures. We discussed this briefly, but I just want to put it a little bit more formal. That the general manager of the Brampton Transit be requested to review reoccurring facility maintenance expenditures identified through the transit facility maintenance audit to determine whether the services remain operational, necessary, appropriately scoped, and cost effective. That the review include portable toilet rentals and other reoccurring goods and services, where the nature, frequency, duration, or cumulative cost warrants further assessment, and that the review considers whether services should be discontinued, reduced, consolidated, delivered through alternative operational approach, or procured through a more appropriate contractual agreement, and that the General Manager of Brampton Transit report back to the September 21st, 2026 Audit Committee meeting on the results of the review and the corrective actions taken or proposed. All those in favor? That motion carries. And then I'll have to receive that as well. Is that on the screen?
Yes.
Here we go. Yep, so I have a motion moved by Member Russell that the report from the Director of Internal Audit to the committee meeting of June 9th, 2026 regarding Transit Facility Maintenance Audit Report 2026 be received, and that the recommendations contained in Appendix 1, Transit Facility Maintenance Audit 2026 be approved. All those in favor? That motion carries. That'll bring us to 6.3. So we have a motion by Councillor Tour to receive the report. All those in favor? That motion carries. 7.1 was dealt with. Other business, there's no other business. Member question period. Do any members have any further questions regarding today's agenda? Seeing none. Public question period. Members of the public are invited to come to the podium, ask any questions about any recommendations made by committee today. Is there anyone here or online? Seeing none. That brings us to adjournment. Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, September 21st, 2026 at 9:30 a.m. I have a motion moved by Councillor Barr to adjourn today's meeting. All those in favor? That motion carries. Thank you, everybody.